So did Alanis Morissette give the angst of your teenage years?
Jagged Little Pill, the album that this song is on, was the soundtrack of my 15th or 16th summer. Yeah. I really loved it. And I loved, one of my friends had the CD. This is right prior to me buying my 3D disc changer. She had the CD and we were just listening to it because we carpooled together back and forth to our little job. And there was a hidden track on there. And
Hidden track?
Yeah, there was a hidden track on there.
Those days.
And I loved the hidden track. And I went and bought myself a tape. It was cheaper to get a tape at the time, but it didn't have the hidden track on it. And I was bitterly disappointed. And I was so disappointed.
Because it was a tape.
It was a tape, yeah. So I was so disappointed that I boycotted buying the CD for like 2 years. Wow. Because I was so mad that it wouldn't be included on the tape, which was a more affordable version for me.
It's one of those albums that sold in such quantity too, and now that CDs are kind of defunct, it's almost like at every single Goodwill you go to, there's at least one copy of this album. And
it's so good.
It's still a good album.
It's so good. It's kind of like Joan Osborne's Relish. I reach for it to buy it like every time, even though like Relish, I have 2 copies of already.
Right.
I don't require another copy.
Sure, there's some good songs
of the
there,
CD, but yeah, for Jagged Little Pill, it's another that I go for.
So maybe it's funny how age interprets youth, I guess, because when I was in my early 20s and I heard this album and I was performing a lot of the songs in the band I was in before I met you.
Before we met. Mm-hmm.
The angstiness of her voice in certain parts of even this song escaped me. Like, you know, but now listening back to it, I'm like, oh, I don't remember her being like so aggressive in the chorus.
She does a little, I hesitate to call it an effect, but it's because I don't know the vernacular for it. She does these little vocal flips almost, like a breathy air escape effect. I don't know how else to call it, but it's not exactly a scoop because it's more of a kind of something like Michael Jackson would have done, but not quite so vocalized.
It's almost like when you hang on a note by accident.
Yes, a hangy.
Like a hangy,
it's like a hangy.
It's like a hangy, but it's like...
But it's purposeful. She places it there.
Yes.
It is very intentional. It does carry a bit of angstiness with it. And all her songs, when you kind of delve into the lyrical content of the majority of Jagged Little Pill, they all have that measure of angstiness to them.
Well, she just sounds pissed off. I
think she was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think she was.
And I'm curious because I think at the time that this album broke, she was already a veteran rocker in Canada.
She's Canadian, right? Yeah.
And I think she had several albums under her belt when this came out. Now, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers played on one of her songs on the album. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he actually played on You Oughta Know.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you listen to it, next time you hear that, you should listen to the bass line because he really killed it. I mean, I thought it sounded really great.
I'm going to have to go listen.
I really liked it, his playing on that particular song.
So it was her and Jewel, and who does the Where've All the Cowboys Gone?
Is that Meredith Brooks?
Is it?
No.
Dang, no. It's
Paula
not.
Cole.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Trio of women, they were pushing some, for my peers, they were pushing some kind of edgy thoughts to the fore for where I was in my life.
Now, if you throw in some extra, I guess, that very that's why music's very formative very informative in your formative years.
Yeah.
I guess is a good way to put it. If you add in, I guess, Sarah McLachlan, Tori Amos, didn't they do what they called Lilith Fair, where it was women on tour, kind of an angsty thing, and maybe like they're like female version of Lollapalooza in a way, sort of. Like,
I think I wanted to say that Lollapalooza actually started as a women's thing, but maybe I'm misremembering as Lilith Fair.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was. Now that it's like core memory unlocked. Yeah. There was and I didn't run in that musical circle, but Come to My Window. Melissa Etheridge. Super edgy, like some really cool stuff. And she was just kind of creeping up on the radar for me personally, not in the radio. She had been around for a while when we met. And you introduced me to even more of her catalog. And I just thought, I feel like these women, I sort of gathered them up and just gathered them into my listening circle and kind of, as we were talking before, actively listened to their music and created a relationship with them and internalized that and felt really represented in a lot of ways.
You know,
and Sheryl Crow.
I can understand that,
yeah.
And I think that
they're strong.
I would have to say that, you know, at the time I didn't understand it because, you know, when I was young, I was fairly naive. I didn't even think that racism was a thing anymore. It certainly didn't believe that sexism was a thing.
Right.
But I have to say that, you know, in my age that I am now, I would say that the music industry is probably one of the last bastions where sexism can reign wildly and run free with almost unchecked and unfettered. It's crazy to me.
The thing is,
the way that it goes.
With that statement, I'll give it with this caveat. It is so prevalent that it's almost overlooked.
Yeah.
It is hidden in plain sight.
It is. It's hidden in plain sight because there's this huge thing, you know, and males to some extent, you know, they have to look a certain way in order to have success. But I think it's much more so on women, you know, and I think it's very wrong the way that it comes off. I think that if you're not pretty to look at, then you really don't stand a chance.
Well, I think now there's some artists in the last couple of decades that I have a lot of respect for because of their stance on body image and on that issue. They've attacked it actively. So, for instance, Sia. I don't know if you're very familiar. I'm not super familiar with her work and her catalog, but I've just started sort of delving in because of other avenues of thought. Anyway, for a while, she didn't show her face at all. Just didn't show her face. It wasn't for public consumption. And another one, Billie Eilish, very young, super talented girl who chose to wear a certain kind of clothing in order to protect her own body from the scrutiny of the public. And like as she's gotten a little bit older, she has decided how she wants to display her body, and like that's good, and I support that. I also support the physical embodiment of the statement. This is not for public consumption. That's not what's on offer. What's on offer is the art that this body is helping to create. And I can understand how part of this can be entertaining, can be enticing.
Especially if the music, I think, you know, if your music is more sexual in nature, then it kind of is going to lead to those things. But there should be no reason if you're singing about a family picnic that the body should be on offer.
Right. Well, it should be the choice of the artist if they want to do it. And I've watched countless videos, especially from the 90s, that portrayed a character in the music video that the artist was not part of that at all. They maybe showed the band playing a few times on a rushed, kind of blurry view. But in general, the character that was playing the storyline that they were trying to tell had nothing to do with, it's not that artist that was acting it out. Because you're telling a story. It's not necessarily your story that you're always telling. Like, we have murder songs. I haven't made murder, and nor do I plan to make murder on anyone ever. So it's a story. That doesn't mean like I want even fake blood on me in order to tell that story. Right. So
yeah, I understand. It's
nuanced. I'll say that, like racism and sexism and genderism and any bias against someone else is extremely nuanced. And it's between, generally I've seen it's between an individual and a group. When you get an individual with an individual, those things generally seem to dissipate because you're creating relationship, which is more important than those ideals that just don't hold fast when you're creating relationship. Now, there are exceptions to that rule for sure, because there are some people that are just truly, well, I won't say the words that I'm thinking about them, but they're just not kind people and they have no interest in the well-being of other human beings. So.
No, I think that, well, kudos on you, really, for sticking to your guns and doing the things in art that are true to you and not bending to what maybe other people think you should do. So
thanks.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anybody that supports like music of that nature as well, good on them.
Yeah. Art for the sake of art. I mean, I enjoy a lot of different forms of art from a lot of different people without ever knowing what they look like. I don't know what tone their skin is. I don't know what gender they are. If their art appeals to me, it appeals to me.
I think it's strange how gender roles from society can hang on so long and so late into your life. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that because when I was a kid, there wasn't a lot of female musicians per se. There was, front people, female singers.
Yes.
But even to this day, it piques my interest. If I see, like, I saw the other day, I saw a female pedal steel player.
Yeah.
And why should it matter, really?
That's a rarity, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think female drummers.
I was thinking, man, good for this band.
Yeah.
Cool. I think she was the only female in the band. I don't remember the name of the band or anything about it other than that. And I thought it was really good.
It was Slim
Cessna.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking the same thing, that she wasn't the front person. She was they had her like where you'd have the keyboardist.
And why shouldn't she be there doing her thing? And it led me to the thought of, good. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that she's there and that she's doing this, and that, that particular band wasn't like, oh, only boys in the band. This is a boys club, or this is a certain kind of
okay,
band.
let me tell you this now, and this is a little bit of an update for my book club people. I did finish the Lucinda Williams biography. It was exceptional. 5 out of 5 stars, 10 out of 10. However high you can rate. I thoroughly enjoyed her form of storytelling about her life. She was very open and very vulnerable, which I feel like is just sort of how she's lived her life. And one thing that she mentioned in there, having been in the middle of this misogynistic sort of culture and stereotyping and everything, was that when she had an idea, a creative point B that she wanted to end up at, she wanted her sound to sound like this right here. Mm-hmm. When she told her team around her, I want this sound right here. Mm-hmm. If any of them disagreed with her, she became hard to work with. Mm. But if she gave way and let her sound be manipulated in the way that they wanted to move it, is it really her sound anymore? So she was either labeled by her own self a pushover, or by the people surrounding her team that she hired, as somebody who's hard to work with.
Yeah.
And that hailed her for years, even though from her point, of course, this is one side of the story. I understand there's always two sides.
If it was a man, then he just knows what he wants.
He knows what he wants. That's the point that she made. But that label stuck to her for decades.
I think that has been maybe an underlying problem of sexism for a long time.
Like women aren't supposed to know what we want?
I've always felt like, as sometimes people become aware or more aware of their surroundings, and as I became aware of the female plight, I can't help to ever understand it because I can't walk in your shoes.
It's not your experience.
Or my experience, but one of the things I realized and became attuned to was there's this, it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of scenario for most women, where if you don't stand up for yourself, you get walked on and you get labeled pushover and, oh, she's easy or whatever. But if you do stand up for yourself, then you're a bitch, and then, well, what a terrible place to be, because you can't, it's a no-win scenario.
And then what?
Right. It's a no-win scenario for women in a lot of what I would consider standing up for your heart's desires, or what you feel passionate about, with a lot of men, but not only men, also women.
Oh, mostly
and
even.
I think, sometimes thoughts of that type of thing gets lost in the sexism movements because, there's so much more darker things that go on, and hideous things like the, well, I could do something for you if, wink, wink, type of stuff, you know? And that's the stuff that comes to the forefront.
So we don't stop.
We don't stop because you're either doing it for yourself and the music and the art's sake, or you're doing it for another reason. And the other reasons don't really hold up in the long run.
Not for me. I guess fame and fortune do have their allure.
And I mean, you can do it for the fame and fortune, but if you don't get the fame and fortune, then at some point you're just going to quit. You know? All the other reasons seems like they would expire at some point. But if you're true to yourself, if you're doing it because you're being true to yourself and being true to what you have inside of you, then I think that's really the only flame that's not going to be extinguished easily, I
think for me, personally, writing, recording, releasing, and touring the original music, I feel every time we complete the composition of a song, that it's a gift, and that gift deserves to be shared with others. And so performance of that in a live situation or in a recorded situation is my desire to share that gift that's been given, and to, I know we say serve the song is sort of what I'm trying to say, but it's also, I believe the music that we've been gifted, that we've had the gifting to help create, deserve to be heard.
Well, we believe that there's power in the word and power in the music, right? That it's especially penetrative to people's hearts and souls.
Right.
And that there's healing power in it, and that there's good that can become from it. And I think if you're a good person and you're a musician and you want to connect with people in that way, then it's a motivating factor that if you believe that the song has something for somebody, then you want to seek out the somebody. You
want it to get out there, at least be available to them, even if you don't know who it is.
And for me, the money's secondary, because financially it's a struggle, especially at the stage we're at. However, even more so, really, any increase in that avenue really allows and affords me to do the thing that I believe I need to do with my music, and that is help people, receive it. And, all the time when people are saying, oh, I was in the hospital, I heard your song. Or, I was pumping gas across the street and I heard your song and I had to come over here. And, it healed something inside of me, or did something to me, or made me feel this kind of way when I was feeling this kind of way.
Yeah.
And influenced them.
There was a shift in me because...
Just being able, we even said just to do the Sunday shout out, if we made one person smile because we did it, then it was a success, and that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So for me, the money
or just lifted them,
like just the
a
reach,
little bit.
You know, the reach to be able to help other people or bring more smiles to people.
It feeds the thing to keep it going.
Right. It feeds the thing to keep it going and do more, because without it,
puts gas in the tank, so to speak.
You know, figuratively
literally,
and literally.
Sometimes,
So without it, you know, then, you know, it takes you 5 years to finish a song, and it takes you endless amounts of,
because we got to do other
jobs,
hustles in order to
make ends meet,
pay for, you know, food
and
housing,
and then you multiply that times all the members of the band,
right?
You know, so it's definitely a challenge, you know?
Yeah.
So
a labor of love, I would call it.
Yeah,
because there is a lot of labor involved, and there's so much love involved.
There is. Yeah, absolutely.